Trump's promised 25% tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada, which represents about 60% of our total imports. As I said, I've been saying this ever since the Reagan Revolution. And I agree with Alexander Hamilton and George Washington and every American president up until the 1980s that tariffs are part of a comprehensive collection of tools that you use to keep American jobs here in the United States. And this is, by the way, not just a jobs issue, it's also a national security issue. We can't build a cruise missile right now without parts from China. That's crazy. But the way to do it is not to just go, 25% tariff until we get fentanyl and illegal limit. That's rhetorical. That's a rhetorical flamethrower. That's burning down the barn to try to get a mouse out of the hay, right? I mean, this is just crazy. But we do need to bring our jobs home. We need to bring our products home. I have a friend who got prostate cancer, and he's convinced he got it from a drug that's made in India that was contaminated with a chemical that causes prostate cancer. Excuse me, pancreatic cancer. Thankfully, he survived, actually. But I mean, my dad got bladder cancer from a diabetes drug he was taking that was contaminated in India by a chemical that causes bladder cancer. It was eventually recalled after he was dead. Now, he died of the mesothelioma, but he had 2 cancers at once when he died. This free trade craziness that Thomas Friedman and Bill Clinton and Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush talked us into back in the 80s and 90s has just decimated so much of our country. My best friend Jerry Schneiderman, the apartment that he lived in until he died in New York was built by the Ladies Garment Workers Union. Remember the old song, "Look for the union label"? It's you'd have to be a certain age to remember that song, those ads. But the Ladies Garment Workers Union, I think they're still around, but they're a shadow of what they used to be. They used to be a major union. They used to have a huge, they basically controlled large parts of New York City. Trump is not going to handle this well. We've had 30 or 40 years of having our jobs shipped overseas. You're not going to reverse that in a week or a month or even in one presidential term. It needs to be done gradually, steadily. It needs to be done with the consent and participation of Congress. It needs to be done in a way that businesses know is not going to be reversed 4 years from now by, President Gavin Newsom or somebody. Meanwhile, Canada and Mexico and China are pushing back. Mexico, first of all, Claudia Sheinbaum, the new progressive president of Mexico, she said, we're more than willing to try to cut fentanyl to the United States. We outlawed it here. She says, to one tariff will come another, and soon until we put our common businesses at risk. And so on until, she said, we don't produce she's talking about, there's just a slaughter going on in Mexico with American-made weapons. And she said, well, we don't produce these weapons. We don't consume the synthetic drugs. Unfortunately, we have the people who are being killed by crime that is responding to the demand for drugs in your country. And, of course, the manufacturing of weapons here in the United States that are being smuggled into Mexico. Scott Bessonette is going to be our Treasury Secretary, assuming he gets confirmed. I don't think he'll have a problem. He's a right-wing billionaire, a major funder of Donald Trump's campaign. Used to work for George Soros. Openly gay guy. Seems like a decent person. Knows what he's talking about. But he says he's gung-ho for tariffs, too. 40% of total U.S. trade would be covered by these tariffs. I said 60% below before I was wrong. It's 40%. Just 3 countries, 40% of all our trade. And he says he's going to do it under the IEEPA, the International Economic Emergency Powers Act. Trump says that. But watch what's going on in Congress. Just last week, there was a new bill submitted in the Senate removing permanent trade relations with China. This happened during the Clinton administration, if my recollection is right, that we granted China most favored nation status. Might have been Bush, but I think it was Clinton. And this legislation that has passed the House. Well, actually, there's a similar bill in the House. I'm sorry, it's now in the Senate. It was just dropped. These are Republican bills, hitting China with 100% tariffs, 50 to 100% tariffs. And the equity markets are not freaking out. The stock market is not crashing, which means that Trump is probably going to push this through, and it may well succeed. Now, Scheinbaum down in Mexico says we're going to retaliate. And China's foreign ministry said, quote, the U.S. should not take China's goodwill for granted, and imposing tariffs of 10% on Chinese imports as a punishment for massive amount of drugs, in particular fentanyl, be sent to the United States from China. This is Trump who said that. He said fentanyl is an issue for the U.S. This is the official Chinese position, not our problem. And the 25% tariffs on Canada, this could be a very big deal because it'll crash Canada's economy. 3/4 of all of Canada's exports come to the United States, $600 billion a year worth. Now, Canada would likely retaliate, but still, Trump is going to cause a depression in Canada.